try and do 2 hours of mapping training. Starting now. Okay. Good night. I love you. Hello, Phil. Can you hear me? You don't have to hear me. I mean, you don't have to say anything. But it's going to be hard to do interactive if I don't hear you. Um, there is text. There is a text chat here that maybe you can see. There's on the left-hand side of the screen, there is probably a stack of icons, and the very top icon. Okay, Phil, yes, you can see that. Oh, you don't. I mean, you can find your mic, or you can type text here, whatever works for you. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, you can hear me fine. This is. I found my mic and I plugged it in, and now I need to get. Okay. Um, there's a settings at the top of my window. I have a settings gear, and that sort of let me pick which microphone to use and the speakers and that sort of thing. And I left it set to voice, not studio. I don't know if that helps you or not. Oh, I see you as muted. So interesting. Yeah, I show you as muted, Phil. I don't know if you did that on purpose or not. I heard something. I swear I heard something. Take your time, by the way. I'm in no hurry. Okay, you don't show as muted anymore. But I don't hear you if you're speaking. Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, how about now?
Now I hear you fine.
Okay. Well, I thought I'd check in and see what you had going. I thought you'd have a large group and had some kind of open discussion going here.
Nah, it never goes like that. The hot list is pretty reserved group.
Oh, okay.
So, are you new to mapping?
Fairly new. I mean, I hooked up over a year ago, did some local stuff, and then through the Red Cross, I was aware of this. I've been in there tracing buildings on the big map there.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you use the ID web editor or do you use JOSM?
I started using JOSM here on that one just because I like the easier building select thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta guess that I can help you with JOSM a little bit to at least make it worth your while if that's what you want to try.
Yeah, I guess the one question I'd have is going beyond just drawing a rectangle. If I need to draw a L or another piece of a building.
Okay.
I saw some stuff about that, but I haven't had a lot of luck. There's not a real easy way for me.
Okay. It's not a problem. It's super easy to do in JOSM. Now you can see my screen. You can see my screen, and it's probably So the trick that I learned today was if you want to make it a little bit bigger, when you're in the Google Hangout screen, if you hit F11 on your keyboard.
Okay, full screen. Yeah, I can see just fine.
That'll make it full screen, and then the other trick you can do is. But it's kind of the part that you see that's my screen that I'm sharing is sort of in a little bit smaller, the whole Google Hangout screen is one size.
Yeah.
And then my screen is a little bit different size, a little bit smaller inside of there.
Right.
Okay, so the trick that you can use is you can make the part that is not my screen, the part that is the Google Hangouts interface, you can make that part smaller, and then that'll make the video part, my screen share part in the middle, bigger. So if you have the Google Hangouts window selected, you hold down the Control key,
Okay.
and then you hit the minus key.
Yeah.
And that makes the Google Hangouts interface smaller so that the video part gets bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah, that's good.
So, I have an L-shaped building right here, coincidentally enough.
Yeah.
And the way that I would do this L-shaped building is I would start with the building tool. So that's the B key will select the building tool for me. And I would draw I would make sure I don't have a bridge selected. So I would make sure I have nothing selected over here. You can see I don't have anything selected. And so I would draw the main part of this building first. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's not too bad, except I have my data layer turned off. Okay, so a couple things. One, I should download some data here. So I'm just going to delete this. So you know that you may or may not know, but JASM has this concept of a data layer and then imagery layers. So right now I have 3 imagery layers. I have Mapbox, I have Bing, and I have an elevation layer.
Okay.
And only one of them is turned on. So Bing is the layer that's turned on. If I turn on, the elevation layer, and I turn off, and I turn off Bing, and now you can see this is what my elevation layer looks like.
Okay.
But I'll turn back on Bing, and I'll turn back off. Now I hope I can find that building again. Now I'll never find that building. So one thing that you can do, like I just made this mistake where I zoomed out or what have you. So the number 8, not F8, but just the number 8 will step you back through your views.
Oh, okay.
So there, I stepped myself back until I'm zoomed in on this L-shaped building. So that's just the straight number 8 key will step you backwards through all the views that you've just been through so you can get back to some place if you zoomed out and can't find it or something like that.
Yeah, that's a useful trick.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm going to get the building tool. Oh, no. First, I need to get a data layer. So I'm going to download my data. Okay. And this building's already drawn, but that doesn't matter to me. So I'm just going to S for select. I use the shortcut keys a lot. So I hit S to get the selection tool, and I'm just going to delete that building. And I'm going to draw my own. I'm going to draw my own L-shaped building. So I would do B to get the building key or the building tool, and this is okay. So I didn't do the world's greatest job on this building, but I'll leave it like that. So I would S key again to get selection, and then I don't know if you know or not, but you can hold down Control and Shift, and you see how my cursor turned to arrows?
Yeah.
And now that lets me rotate the object that I have. Are you seeing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Did you already know that trick?
No, that's Control and Shift at the same time.
Yep. And Control and Alt lets you scale it. So you use the scale one pretty often if you're doing huts, because huts are all a different size. And you can just cut and paste or copy paste huts and then use the Control Alt and just scale them to the right size. But in this case, I was using Control and Shift so that I can get this thing rotated so that it looks about right and get it centered on here. So the very simple way to do an L-shaped building is this is the L-shaped part right here on my screen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put a point right here. I'm going to add a node, just like a corner node. I'm just going to add a node right here because then I'm just going to be able to pull this section out.
Okay. Yeah, I'd read the directions on that, but I wasn't able to get it to work when I was doing it. So.
Okay. Well, let's just give it a try. So this is selected, and I'm going to hit the A key because that gives me my add. That gives me the add tool. And essentially, you double click.
And is that?
I'm sorry.
That's probably what I was missing, hitting the A key there for add.
Add. And so now I'm just going to double click, and that gives me 1 point. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah,
That
it's
gives me
showing us
1 point. And so now it's the X key, or it's this extrude tool. I don't know what they call it. Create area. It
Yeah.
makes no sense, but see how it says X? There's an X for the shortcut key there.
Okay.
So I'm just going to, I don't know what create area means. I don't know why it's a protractor or whatever that is. But anyhow, I just hit the X key, and now I just grab this and I pull it out.
Okay.
And that's how I make an L-shaped building.
Okay.
And, you know, you can also use this like, oh, okay, my building, I don't know if you can see it, but this is a little too big. So while you have that X key, you can also, you know, just pull something in. You could tighten it up. I could make this, you know, if I didn't feel like that was right. So you can do both. You can pull stuff out and you can pull stuff in.
Okay.
This X key. But that's how I would make an L-shaped building.
Okay. Yeah, that'll save me some time over the way I was doing it before. I combine 2 rectangles and then just delete the section.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, that's not a bad way either. I mean, that, like, for example, if I needed, you know, if part of this was rounded, that's really the only way to do it if it's rounded, you know, is to join a couple and then, you know, if this had a round section on it, if this had a round section, this is how I would make a round section. So let's say there was a half circle coming out here. This is how I make a round section. I draw a single line, and then Shift 0. See, it's selected still, but Shift 0, or not Shift 0, Shift the letter O. Shift O makes that into a circle.
Okay.
And then I would just S key to select, and I would Shift, and then I never remember what it is, but I would join the overlapping areas, and that would give me something with a rounded face to it.
Okay, that's the join the overlapping areas. Okay.
Yeah, join overlapping areas. Works out pretty good.
Okay.
So, just undo that, undo that, undo that. So that's my, actually I could probably go all the way back here. Get this building back. We'll just leave this building there. I'll just leave that there. Okay. So, what else? Got any other any other JASM related questions? Stuff you want to do?
No, I did have one question when I was looking at some of the before and afters and where people are, where you had buildings, and I haven't done any of this mapping, I was just looking at them, but where they've used the metal from their old buildings and they're putting up new buildings. Are we tagging those a certain way, or are we marking them, or what's going on there?
That I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, if it's a building, it's just a building. It doesn't.
Yeah. I
haven't done anything with new imagery, honestly. I've only been doing this basic task of mapping the existing buildings.
Yeah, that's what I've been working on. Out of curiosity, I was looking to see some of the damage, and I brought up some of the later images, and I found a spot where the locals had already started putting up new buildings, reusing the 10 from the collapsed buildings. And so I didn't know if that was considered a IDP or what, but I left it alone. I left it alone because I didn't know.
Yeah, no, the IDPs are usually, I mean, they're usually something separate. Let's see what happens here. So I'm sure I have a couple more tips. See, I don't see, this is interesting. Land use grass. Okay, so this is tagged wrong, coincidentally enough. What's this tagged as? Amenities school. So this isn't, I mean, land use grass is a little.
Yeah.
I would, I don't know. I would delete that. I would add this. This should be leisure common.
Leisure common, yeah.
Yeah, we just try and do it consistently. That definitely looks like leisure common. And I don't see any of these buildings tagged here, or any of these buildings mapped.
No.
So I would probably map in these buildings a little bit too. And I don't know, this, I can show you one little mapping thing here that may or may not apply. Okay, so this building looks to me like, let's see what happens. Mapbox say about this. Mapbox doesn't help me. But this building looks like it's at least a couple stories. This
Yeah.
looks like it's a couple-story building. And you can see, if not 3 or 4 stories. So it's a little less important. It's not a super high rise or anything, but one mapping technique is this. So I would switch B for my building tool, and I would map the roof as I can see it, and then S for my select tool, and then technically I should move this to here.
Right.
Okay.
The angle.
Yeah, because this is not, the building is not really, the building's not really up here. You move it to the base of the building, and that's a little more accurate. Somebody will come back. Somebody will just come by and fix it for you later. They'll put it back where they think it should be. But the right way to do it, anytime you can see these oblique angles on here, you generally want to move it to the base of the building is the most accurate way to do it. And
Right.
it looks to me like I don't see, yeah, so I would do X key and I would pull this out a little bit. And then I would do this building here. Let's see how we do. That's not very good.
Oh, so you'll have the overlap and combine that, huh?
Then I'll just combine them because they look attached to me.
Yeah, they do.
And so I would set this at the base, and then I think that's Shift A. Yeah, that's how I would do that one. But it looks like goes on with that one for me. So I'll just map those. And I try to, I try to map neatly. So this, you know what I mean? It shouldn't go through buildings.
Yeah, I agree.
If you can avoid it, it's supposed to be done right. And so it looks like there's one more building here. And what is this? Highway equals residential. Okay, right. I guess I'm trusting they know what's going on here. I wouldn't have been able to map that. I'm going to trust they know what they were doing. That's okay. But I'm going to straighten this out just a little bit. You generally don't want an area to touch the road if you can avoid it. But that road still doesn't look right to me. It still looks like it's going through that building. By the way, what I just did, if you're messing with a road, this is your most likely time to get conflicts, is when you're messing with a road. Because this is what's likely to go off, and see, this goes off into this other square. So if I edit this road and somebody else edits the road over here, that's how you get conflicts. But
because it continues as one item.
Yeah, because it goes outside my task square. But you can move a road around all day long, and it won't ever cause a conflict. The thing that'll cause the conflict is if you add a node or delete a node. But if you're just moving a road, if you're just straightening it out or making it curve like it's supposed to, all this kind of little putzing around I'm doing, this would not cause a conflict.
Yeah. That's about as much as I've done on the roads. They've seemed pretty well complete on all the ones I've worked on.
So you never have to worry about just moving nodes. If I clicked on one of these pluses and added a node, then it would be a little bit different story.
Well, what's your opinion on the areas they've set up as residential areas with just have 2 or 3 buildings in them?
It's okay. It's not wrong. If we're supposed to map the buildings, we're supposed to map the buildings. But if they circle 3 buildings and mark it a residential area, it's not wrong.
Okay.
And it doesn't hurt.
I saw the discussion on the 20 buildings or whatever, but so I've mapped the buildings inside those small areas, but just left the residential area where it was.
Yeah, it's both. It's both. So
yeah.
And it doesn't. It's great if somebody goes through and just circles 3 buildings and marks it as a residential area. That's totally helpful. Anyway.
Yeah, it helps me to find them actually.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah, it helps me to find them and map them later. If I'm going to do the individual buildings. Okay, so I feel pretty good about this. I think we improved the situation here. So I'm just going to go ahead and upload that just for entertainment value. So standard warning, unnamed things. This is 1018. That's good enough for me.
Okay.
And so that's that. So some other, let's see here, other JASM tips and tricks that I might have for somebody who's already a JASM user. Any questions? Anything coming up while we're doing this?
Not specifically Jocelyn, but one question I've had in the past is the what do you call them, the block numbers or something? Is there any rhyme or reason to how those numbers are assigned?
Which numbers are those?
The editing areas or whatever you call that.
The task squares, you mean? In the tasking manager, you mean?
Yeah, in the task manager, and it's broken down into, when you click on a task to edit, it'll have a certain number. And I was just curious when I was trying to find some previous ones I'd worked on.
So like these here.
Yeah.
This number, this 2143. It starts out with some rhyme and reason. So like this is 2143, 2413. This is probably 2414. No, 2738. Now it loses the rhyme and the reason once you start dividing these up.
Okay.
Once those get split. But there is a way you can you see my my tasking manager?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a way. I guess I'm not logged into OpenStreetMap. That's interesting. I guess eventually that'll catch up with me, so I'll just log into. Okay, I'll do that. Let's see what it has here. There is a way. I mean, here I can see. Somebody told me there was a way to see basically everything you've done. I mean, here I can see the tiles that I marked done. If I mark a tile done, it gets recorded in this list. But somebody, I mean, you can go to your OSM profile and get a look at your edits.
Yeah. Well, for what I was doing, it was more of a recent edit, and I'm trying to go back to that one, and I realized I can just use my browser history and find it that way. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Hopefully it stays intact.
As long as no one split it up again.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So let's see here. So I'm going to go back to just sharing JAWS. Hi, there's somebody else joined named Courtney. Courtney, are you there?
Okay. We can go through the text operation again.
We could. No mic, sorry. Oh, that's perfect. No problem, Courtney. There is text chat. Oh, Courtney. Well, there'll be an archive. Yes, ma'am, there will be. This gets automatically put on YouTube. That's the joy of these. That's the joy of these live on-air hangouts. So when this is over, it'll get archived on YouTube.
And where do we find that?
I think from the link you have, from the link that you followed here, I think you'll be able to find the thing on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. So I don't see. Let's see here. I don't see. I don't see. I don't see. Oh, here, because I haven't done this. Oh, I have done this. One of the plugins that I encourage you to get for JASM, if you haven't, is get this GeoChat plugin.
GeoChat?
Yeah, GeoChat. It's just in the list of plugins. If you've ever gone to edit preferences and then the plugins, it's just in this list. And the nice part about GeoChat is it shows you other mappers on the map.
Okay.
Which is super helpful because you can actually work with somebody and you'd see their circle here, so you could go stand on something and say, what do you think this is? Does this look like a building to you? And then the other person can see right where you are and they can come over and look at it. And it's great for working on stuff with somebody if you're ever mapping with somebody.
Yeah. Now, how do you do that because when I lock it out to edit one, how would someone else have access to it?
Well, I mean, there's people like me who don't go through the tasking manager.
Oh, okay, okay.
Or you might be asking somebody specifically for help. And so, if you see down here in the coordinates window.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you double click on this, you get this dialog box up.
I haven't done that, no.
Okay, and this URL right here down in the bottom, you can share this URL.
Okay.
So I can, and I can paste it right in here in the same spot. So I can copy this URL and I can put it in, some chat, and then other people can join, now anybody else, now you could copy that URL and you could double click down here on your coordinates, and then you could just select all and then paste it, and now you'd be able to come to this exact same spot where I am. And if you had the GeoChat plug in, I'd see you standing here now. But copy pasting those URLs is how you share your location with people when you say, "Can you come and look at this?"
Okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it super easy. You just double click, and that's the center of my screen. This URL is the center of my screen.
Okay.
So you just center yourself up and you zoom in at, whatever zoom level you think is going to be appropriate, and then you double click, copy, paste, and somebody can come right here and see exactly what you're looking at too. So GeoChat plugin. I don't, like I said, it tells me that my friend Severin is standing around here someplace, but I don't honestly see them. So I don't know where he might be. I could type in here and ask him for his location, but I'm not going to do that. But it would be interesting to see him just for demonstration purposes, but I don't. So yeah, so it says he left and then it says he's here. So, maybe one other thing that's interesting, I'm not going to really map this, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. So I didn't download data, so this is just my own personal data layer. It's got no data from OSM in it. So one of the other things that's kind of nice if you're mapping roads is you can come up here. I don't know if you've ever done this. You can go to the View menu, and you can choose Viewport Following. And then A for your Add tool, and then you can just start mapping. You can just start clicking, and it's automatically moving the window for me. So I could just map a really long road this way, and I never have to worry about moving the... This is pretty handy for long roads. Should be a little more careful about it than I'm being, but...
Sure.
But this makes it super simple. You can use this for roads, you can use this for rivers, you can use this for anything where it's a lot of clicking and you don't want to have to move the window every time. Especially if they're relatively straight.
Well, I assume a lot of these roads were already mapped before the earthquake, or else y'all really got in there and mapped a lot of roads quickly.
It's a little bit of both. Yeah. So viewport following. That's another one I use pretty often. Turn that on and off to.
Got some notes going here.
Yeah. So viewport following is a pretty handy one. Let's see. So about the building tool. Another one that's interesting, another tool that you could get used to using is, so I'm going to move this off and I'm going to say go ahead and move it. So you can see, so somebody mapped this road really poorly. Let's pretend they mapped this road poorly, and I want to fix it. So another super useful tool in JOSM is the Way tool. And the Way tool is going to let me just adjust this way. All these lines are called ways. So the Way tool is for editing an existing way, and I use this pretty often too, primarily to fix roads. And so it's the W key to give you the Way tool. And I don't know if you can see, can you see there's a dotted, see my cursor and there's a dotted red line?
Yeah.
And you can sort of see the nodes. So the end node is red, and now this second node is red, and now this third node is red, and I have this dotted line. And what's going to happen is it's going to move those nodes. So this is the second one is the red node, so when I click it's going to move that node. So see, it's super easy for me to just shift this whole road over. And the dotted line is going to tell me the new the new path that the way is going to have. The red filled in node is the node it's going to move, and the dotted line is what it's going to look like after I click. So I can just move this, shift this whole road over one at a time
How
without.
is that different from just moving the node?
I'm never grabbing the node.
Okay.
I mean, you're right. I could just take these individual nodes and I could grab them and move them, but I have to, separately click and grab them.
Okay, so it will move multiple nodes if you are
Well,
far enough down.
it's just automatically moving the node it's closest to.
Oh, okay. So you
See,
don't
I
have
never have to grab the node.
Okay, so it saves you clicking.
I actually messed that one up. I moved the wrong node. I wanted to move that one. It's just, and then if I hold down the control key, now instead of moving a node, now it's going to add a node. So now I'm adding nodes to the way. I'm not really doing a very good job with them, but that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
But this way tool makes it pretty easy if you're doing like follow-on mapping or corrective mapping or just fixing up somebody else's mapping. It makes it pretty fast to get a road straightened out like this if somebody, maybe they did it with different imagery or the wrong offset. It's not easy to just move the whole item, but you want to move each individual node. So I end up using this a lot because I do a lot of follow-on mapping, a lot of fixing up other mapping people have done. So this way tool helps a great deal. Makes it go pretty fast.
Oh, all right.
So that's the way tool. Let's see. You already know how to join stuff. And let's see what I have for plugins. Maybe I have an interesting GeoChat plugin. That's my favorite plugin by far. But let me see what else I have installed here.
Looks like we got a couple more people join the hangout here.
Did we? Courtney, and Courtney doesn't have a mic, and Russell, if that's the Russell I know, it's Russ Defner. Russell doesn't have any questions. Russell's the one that taught me everything I know, so.
Okay.
So he's not gonna have anything to ask me. So what else do I? Utils plugin, I have no idea what that does. That just adds functionality. Mirror download. Mirror download is an interesting plugin. Measurement one. Log for J, no idea. JST, no idea. Import image, no. Imagery offset database. GeoChat, GeoTools. Field papers. None of these are easy to demo. Building you have. Building generalizer. Building tools. Somebody showed me a neat one, but I don't remember what it's called. Figure that out later. Let's see here. More advanced. I'm running out of stuff. Imagery you already know about. I mean, I've got a long list of imagery that I've added. So you know that you can shade these layers in and out?
No, I didn't know that.
That's what this one is. So I have these two layers turned on, but the Bing satellite covers up my elevation data. But I can select the Bing satellite layer, and then this thing that looks like a gradient, this button here, gives me this slider, and now I can, I can fade in and out whatever layer I want.
Okay, yeah, it's like a transparent.
Yeah, transparency. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. Yeah, so I can, and you use this a lot when you're trying to figure out the alignment of stuff. You'll fade it in and out, or some other mapping you'll have something where you'll have multiple layers, but I use it a lot if I have more than one imagery layer and I'm trying to figure out what their alignment is I'll fade one in and out to see how off it is. Now it's not very good with, the trouble is this elevation data is a lot lower resolution than Bing is, but you can fade these layers in and out, and you can reorder them. I can put I can put this one on top of the Bing. And then I can, now I'd be fading this one in and out because that's the one that's on top. So you can reorder these if that matters in some way, shape, or form to you. And it matters. I mean, it comes up for me pretty often for the mapping that I do. Sometimes I have 7 or 8 layers, and which order they are and turning them on and off makes a big difference. So you can do this. Okay, how about this? This is another power feature of. So I don't know, but under this selection box, you can do search. So if I just want to select buildings, in here I can just type building equals star, and now it only selected my buildings and didn't select any of the roads. This is how, like, when you find some place where somebody has drawn 1,000 buildings and none of them are square, this is how you square them all in 2 seconds. You search building equals star, and then I would come up here and I would say unselect the nodes, and then I would just hit the Q key, and it would square all of these buildings, which I'm not going to do because this building isn't supposed to be square. But here I would just hit the Q key. I can also see that means that this is not a properly tagged building. This object has no tags. So in this instance, I'll go ahead and add a tag to it. Yes. I don't know if you're used to, I do Control A to add tags a lot.
No, not really. I mean, like I say, I've just basically been outlining houses, so the building thing's already put my tags on there for me.
Oh, good for you. If you do, so like if you're doing tagging, you'll do Control A and it'll, bring up this tagging dialog. And I have mine set to save the last 20 things. So I've been tagging highways, and I named an island, and I was doing clinics and aid posts and other health facilities and pharmacies, and I was also doing some damage assessment. But you can set this to be, I think, like up to maybe 20 is the maximum, but you can set its memory to remember. But I used a building equals yes, so I'll just put that tag on here. That one was untagged. You might also notice, this is interesting. This may or may not be interesting. Map paint styles. Let's see how I did here. Okay, so all of, how all of this is displayed for me probably looks a little different than yours looks. So my roads are, bright red, and my buildings are black lines. And that's because this uses style sheets. And I don't know if you can see it, but I have my own style sheet defined. So yours probably uses the default style sheet. So this probably looks more like what you're used to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is, you can define your own style sheets to better display things. For example, this style sheet is used for validating. So I can see that there's a building joined. That's why there's a big red triangle here. So I can see there's a building joined to a land use polygon. So I would fix that. And the way you fix that is you select the building, and then you use the unglue ways, and that disconnects it. So now I can just make this a regular building and square it and let that be that, if it is even a building.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably a building.
Yeah.
So this layer, this is the layer where I was just messing around with. That layer I'm going to delete. Oops, this layer I'm going to delete. But this layer 6 is valid data, so I'll upload that since I corrected this building too. So I'll upload those. Still Courtney and Russell and you. Okay. Courtney, you can type. Courtney, do you have any questions about using JASM, or do you need a basic introduction to JASM or anything? Gets a little blinky there sometimes. Yeah, other than that, this basically looks okay. These are a little loose. These are a little big. this highway equals road. I haven't really looked at the Nepal highway tagging guidelines. So building tool, do you know this trick of the building tool? So now I can draw, another building that does whatever I want. But if you select a building, now, so I hit S for select, selected my building, and now I'm doing B to get my building tool again, and now they'll all automatically be aligned. Whoops. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. So now I can't
think
draw
I've accidentally stumbled across that before.
Yeah, you'll start to figure out why can't I make a building, and it's because you have one selected, so it's going to force them all to be aligned.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah, that was a problem, but the escape key took care of that. So.
Yeah, the escape key will get your one selected building unselected, but that's what it's doing. So, like here, I just noticed here, these are all aligned. This is a little funky, but that's okay. Actually, let's see here. Yeah, those are probably individual buildings. So if I were drawing these, if I were mapping these, I probably would have selected one of the buildings and then mapped all the rest of them so that they stayed perfectly aligned. Here they're a little out of alignment, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. It's close enough.
Okay.
That's what made me think of it. Courtney, no, I'm just sitting gathering information for research. Okay, that's great. Well, by all means, please let us know if any questions come up, Courtney. Okay, so I don't know other JASM tips and tricks. I should know something else, but I sure don't seem to.
I'm going to see if I can open JASM in my other monitor. So if I disappear, it's because my computer crashed.
Okay. I had 100 tips and tricks when I was doing this at the summit. Now I don't seem to have any.
Move. Ah! It's too smooth. I got it. Look out.
Hello.
I'm still here.
Yeah, I was saying hello. We got a visitor show up.
Oh, I see. Russell, can you think of any tips or tricks that I should be sharing that I'm not with a JASM user, a new JASM user?
One of these things?
Okay. Tony, I just sat in on a JASM workshop, and it seemed like there were 100 tips and tricks, and now none of them I remember. But I strongly encourage you to learn the keyboard shortcuts. That makes it go a lot faster. We went over paint styles. You can change these paint styles. It's just a text file. But you can also download. There's 100 different paint styles. So you can go to Edit, Preferences, and then Map Paint Styles. And so you can see there's all sorts of paint styles that you can select from that show you different things. And, it's just a matter of trying them out to see which ones help, which ones don't. Wheelchair routing, all kinds of stuff. So that actually brings up another one. So under these layers, under my imagery layers, imagery preferences, here's one that I just started using for Nepal. So up in this top part here is the list of, all the publicly available imagery layers. And there's a fair number of them, and this is a country code, so a lot of them are country specific. And most of them are not the states. I don't know if you're in the states or not. But the one that I find extremely useful is Open Cycle Map. So what you do is from up here, you select whatever it is, and then you click on this Activate button, and it'll move it from the list of available imagery providers down into the imagery URLs that show up in your imagery menu. So these are already green. So the green ones mean I already have them in my main list. So Open Cycle Map is already there. But if it wasn't green, I would click on it, and then I would click on Activate, and that would move it down to the bottom. And once it's moved down to the bottom, it shows up in my imagery menu here. And Open Cycle Map is right there. And Open Cycle Map is topo map of the world, because people who bicycle care about hills. So especially when you're mapping, this helps a lot when you're mapping waterways and you're trying to figure out which direction a waterway might go. You can add the Open Cycle Map topo layer, and it'll start to show you where the hills are to help you figure out which direction the streams might flow. So this came up a lot for Nepal mapping.
Okay, and that's just Open Cycle Map?
Yep, I went to Imagery Preferences, and I got it out of this list up here, and I hit Activate in the middle, and that moved it to my list down here, and then it was in my imagery menu.
Yeah, when you click on your image, it's not showing up on my end here, but I found it in.
Oh, you don't see my pop-down menu?
No. I don't know if other people are seeing it, but no, the pop-down never comes up.
Interesting. It's no fun.
But I have mine up now, so I followed along, and I found it.
Okay. Great. So, so this is helpful. It's a helpful layer. And I encourage you to explore the other imagery layers that are there and try out some different ones. Let's see. Oh, field papers, more tools. I hardly ever use any of these, really, truth be told. Filtered. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it a layer that's providing the boundary of the task we're working on? Or the reason I ask is I tried to go back and do something here locally, and I've got the diagonal lines, so showing that's not the task I'm working on. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I do understand what you're saying, but I don't quite know I don't quite know the answer.
Okay. Because I had to load a GPX file to get that to show up, and I was just wondering where that is, if I could turn that on and off.
I mean, usually that would indicate to me that you're working outside of an area that you've downloaded data for. You know what I mean? So not even really the tasking manager as much as where you've downloaded. Like, see, I don't have any data downloaded, so I don't have any grays, any stripes. But if I download the data for this area, and I'm not doing anything from the tasking manager at all, okay. I just have an area, I just am viewing an area, and now I'm downloading the data for it. And the minute I do that, it creates a data layer. And now every place where I haven't downloaded data, I have the stripy lines.
Okay, so it's just indicating I have not downloaded the data. Okay.
Yeah, and you're on a data layer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when I don't have a data layer, I don't have any stripy lines. So when you have a data layer that has some place you've downloaded data, it's going to indicate that to you, that you're someplace. So, and you can do this. So I'm going to download this data, and now I've got stripy lines. But let's say I want to figure out, are there buildings mapped here? I just moved over. I still have data layer 8. I just moved over, and I say download. And see down here is a checkbox. It says download as new layer.
Okay.
If I uncheck that, now when I download it, it just extends. See, now my downloaded area has just been extended, and I still have stripies wherever I didn't download data. So you can keep, you can be moving along and you can download more data. Just don't check new layer, and it'll just keep, wiping out the stripy lines and getting the data for those areas.
What I will do is, get the best policy I can.
So this all looks pretty well mapped.
Surgery.
It's not too bad. I mean, not too bad. This is all pretty good, frankly. So, here's some, here's a couple of unsquared buildings, not a big deal. Select them and hit the Q key, and that squares them and jaws them. And this one doesn't fit very well, so I'd do the X key and stretch it a little. And I'd S for select, and then I'd do Control Shift, and I would rotate it so it fits a little better. And I do this a lot, where I look at stuff like this and I turn on and off my data layer to get a sense of. So this looks to me like it's way too big. So so I usually put one corner, like, see, this looks to me like the size of the building. So this building's just way too big. So I would straighten it out a little, X key, and then I would tighten it a bit so it really a little bit better matches the building.
Oh. Yeah. Well, that's a surprise because she didn't like any of them.
See, this one's way too big. I don't know what this is way off here. So I would X key, and I would shorten it up.
I've seen a lot of people do that because they're including that little piece that sticks out.
Yeah.
It's a separate building, but a lot of them are outlined that way.
Yeah. It's okay. It's still super helpful. It's not bad. It's just as long as I'm standing here looking at it, it's totally fine. So all these are little. All these. So I mean,
in there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not good. This is not good. But all these just can use a little square. So I'm just control clicking all of these. I have my control key down just to get all those selected. And then it's just the Q key. Squares them all up. They all turn out okay. Sometimes you got to do a little rotate, but they all turned out pretty good. This, I don't know what this is about. I can't. So here's another, I don't have any idea what that is. Interesting. IDP camp. That's not an IDP camp, by the way. This is total error. So here's another handy feature. Control H. It's the history of this object. So I can see who created it and when they last added. I don't know why they would call this an IDP camp. So that's just got to go.
So would you want to look at the later imagery?
Oh, that you're a genius. Yeah, that's okay. You got me on that one. I'll leave that one. You're right. I don't believe that there's an IDP camp that's that big, but you're right. I'm not looking at the right imagery for it. That's a very, very good point. Good call. I'll leave it. This I just don't know about. I don't know what's going on with this thing here. Not a building that looks like this. So here's another thing that I often do. So this is not good. I mean, I honestly have a hard time even telling if those are buildings. I tend to err on the side of not mapping things if I can't tell what they are. I guess those are buildings. You see these things here?
Yeah, there's a shadow on the north side of all three. So.
but they're so short. They look so short. You know, because sometimes there's piles of stuff in fields. This is probably a building. But it can be real easy to mistake a pile of something for a building, especially in huts. But, see, this looks super flat to me. I can't...
On the right, it almost looks like a field or something. That's why I thought it might be an IDP that was built in a open area.
But this is probably a building. That's probably a roof line. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to mapping it. So I took what was on here, which was a mistake. That's not right for sure. So I just moved it out of the way, and I'm just going to map a building. So B key, and I'm just going to map that as a building. I'm going to map this as a building, and I'm going to map this as a building. This looks like to me too. And so now what I can do is, because somebody already mapped this, you know what I mean? If I look at the history on this, this person mapped it. You know what I mean? And we always want to respect the mapping that other people did. So they didn't map it right, but I'm not going to delete it. What I am going to do is I remapped it, and now I'm going to select this item and this item, and I'm going to go to... You might need to install a plugin for this. This might be the More Tools plugin. But replace geometry. And so I'm going to just... It recognizes that one is tagged as a house and one is tagged as building equals yes. And I'm going to say make it building equals yes. And so now you see this, the previous one just disappeared. That previous big thing that I moved out of the way.
Yeah.
And now this building has its history. So this keeps the fact that this is the first person. He or she keeps credit for having mapped it. And that way you can fix up stuff that's not worth, like you can just manually fix things or whatever. But sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes it's just easier to just remap it. In this case, it's not. But sometimes it's just easier to remap it, select them both, and then do replace geometry. And this is building equals yes. And now the old one goes, the new one's there, and it retains the original mapper's history. And you can see it tells me when Chi08 mapped it, they had building equals house. When B. Gerardo mapped it, it changed to building equals yes. So this, you can get a long history on these things. Like this road probably has a long history. Yeah, so this road just got mapped last week. Maybe this road has a longer history. I mean, a couple people have edited this road, but still it just got created last week. So the tags all stayed the same between when Chomi mapped it and A. Aaron Dennis mapped it. Tags didn't change, but the nodes changed. So A. Aaron Dennis added a bunch more nodes, extended it, made it longer, then Chomi mapped it. When you do follow-on mapping, that sort of stuff, you check the history a lot. This is not especially useful. This doesn't do very many people very many good. Short, unconnected paths like this. It doesn't hurt. Well, I mean, it does hurt. It clutters the map. I wouldn't have mapped this. You see what I'm talking about here?
I know it sounds like I'm supposed to do something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have mapped that. But it's not wrong. But generally, you want it to connect to something. It probably does. It's hard to see. And so I can't map it because I can't see. But it probably does connect to this road. But I can't see it well enough to map it. But short segments like that, they don't add a short segment like this that connects to a road, totally fine. A short segment like this that doesn't connect to anything, fine, but not super helpful. It's not wrong, but it's not super helpful. Short segment like this, that's great all day long. It's not unclassified, but I would change its value to track. this mapping all looks pretty good. Squared everything up. You know, these are all a bit big. If you were really mapping residential areas and trying to do them right, you would be a lot tighter than this. You would try and, you would try and not have a lot of extra space in your residential areas. I mean, certainly not extra space that's out in the middle of nowhere. See, this does not look like a building to me.
No.
That looks like dirt. So this I would probably get rid of. That's probably not a building. These could use a little squaring. Yeah, so I blink on and off my data layer a lot to try and get a look at what this looks like without drawing on top of it. So this looks like a building. You could probably map that building. This looks a little... It's okay. So I do a lot of this, where I just try and see if what's mapped is right or not. That all looks fine. It's okay. Oops. Square a couple of those up. Grabbing these plus signs adds a new node. If I grab it here at a plus sign, it'll add a new node. Does that make sense?
Well, where does it add the new node?
Right,
right where you grab it. Okay.
Right where I'm grabbing it.
Yeah.
That adds a node. That's what those plus signs are for. Like I said, if you're doing, residential areas nice and tight, because they try and do population estimates based on how big these things are. So it helps to make them nice and tight. I mean, the population estimates are rough, but the less rough, the better. So the tighter the residential areas are, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't kill anything to... It wouldn't be wrong to circle those with a residential area. Wouldn't be wrong to circle this. See, somebody's already mapped this with a residential area, but I'll download it as a new layer. So the other thing that you can do that you may have, another plugin that you can use as you get to be a little bit more advanced mapper, or you're doing mapping outside of the tasking manager, which reminds me, I'll just go ahead and upload changes. Again, so I'm messing with stuff, but it's not because I'm not really messing with roads, it's not very likely to cause a conflict. Road mapping, that's what's going to cause a conflict. But if I edit this, the chances that somebody else edits it, pretty slim. Adding buildings, there's no chance anybody's going to have edited a building that I haven't uploaded yet. And if we end up with two buildings stacked on top of each other, somebody will delete one of them and it'll be fine. So another plugin that's kind of useful, more advanced, JASM, is this download from Mirror plugin. So if I try and download this, if I say download, okay, well, it's going to let me do that. So if I try and download this area, it's still okay. That's not right. There's no way this can download. I find that impossible to believe. Oftentimes, when you're trying to download a large area, I guess this is going to be okay. You can, OpenStreetMap will say this area is too big to download, and that's where the download from Mirror plugin will save you. It'll let you download a much larger area. But it also lets you specify what to download. I'm surprised it downloaded that. So you can see all these triangles. This is because I have my hot validate style set. So it's telling me that it considers whatever's going on at these triangles to be a problem. And it's, because these land use things share nodes. Land uses should share nodes. Most other things should not. So this is legal because this is a farm. Somebody mapped all of this as farm, and then it rubs right up against this residential area. So they share these two nodes. And that's fine for land use, because land use often does butt up right against each other. Like, what would not be okay is if this residential area shared nodes with the road. That would not be okay, because it's not residential area right up to the road. You know what I mean? There's road. This is what we call a center line. So residential area stops here, and then there's road to the center line. So you generally don't share nodes with a road, but two different land use types: land use farm, land use residential. The right way to map those is to have them share nodes where they butt up against each other. It's the right way to do it. And then this is probably forest. Yeah, so this is natural equals wood, shares the nodes with this farmland one, because these are land uses. So this is all mapped okay. So butts up against here and butts up against the forest. You might notice if I click on this line, since these are two lines directly on top of each other, over here it says land use equals farm. And I can click on this all day long, and all I can select is land use equals farm. So that's where you hold down the Alt key. And now I click on it, and now I've selected the natural equals wood. So when there's two things stacked on top of each other, the Alt key lets you cycle through selecting everything that's in the stack. I don't know if that makes it's hard to explain. But otherwise, I have no way to select the other things unless I hold down the Alt key.
Okay.
That lets me select, because there's two things stacked on top of each other here. That's what these triangles indicate to me. That's its way of telling me it considers that an error. But in land use, it's not an error. It is an error like when buildings, oftentimes when buildings share nodes, it's a mistake. So anyhow, that's the validate style sheet. I could just go back to the standard JOSM style sheet. It probably looks more familiar. But I often use my own validate style sheet, because road is wrong. Most of the mapping I do, footway. Footway is not what we use. I also don't know how they know that it lets horses go on there. Motor vehicle unknown. Bicycle, footway. Who did this? So then, so when you're doing this, like, it's weird. Bicycle allowed, highway footway, horse allowed, motor vehicle unknown. Don't know. So I would click on this B. Blum gentleman person. I'm going to assume it's a male. I would click on their name, and it's probably going to spend a month and start up Firefox for me, which is a problem. But anyhow, normally I have Firefox up and running, and I would click on this, and then I would get to see their mapping history in OpenStreetMap, and help me figure out if they're a very experienced mapper or not, as to why they might be putting, horses permitted, that kind of stuff on there. And it'll take a day for my Firefox to start up. So this is my mapping, my paint style turns things that are not tagged correctly for Africa red. So that's why that's red. This is red. Yeah, see, this is red. This has a triangle because it shouldn't be joined there. So I would just click on it, and I would say unglue ways. And then I'm going to grab this and make it a little tighter. This is a little much. You can even make it really tight. You want to try not to get a lot of extra space in here. Oops. Much as you can. It's a compromise. It's all fine. But you can tighten them up if you want. This, I would probably map in. What's this mapped in? Unclassified. Yeah, that probably is unclassified. I would probably map in here. Or not. I read this path. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Okay. Alfio joined. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, Courtney. Let me catch up with your questions. Okay, so let me just catch up with text here. Who's providing? Courtney, it varies. Yes, this imagery, Courtney, if you're still here. So, Courtney, the imagery coordination is a big part of what we do. So we already have agreements with Mapbox and Bing that they let us use their imagery for mapping. And so after the quake, we are working with those same partners, Bing, Mapbox, Digital Globe, the people who do the Pleiades satellites, all the satellite providers we work with directly to tell them where we need updated imagery, and they start making that imagery available to us. So I'm only working with pre-event imagery, but a lot of these tasks have post-event imagery, and it's because the satellite companies have, we have a coordination channel going with the satellite companies where we're telling them where we need imagery for, and it was cloudy right after the event, so it took a fair amount longer than normal to get good imagery from after the event. But the satellite companies work with us, and they, they let us use their imagery to do our mapping, and that's how we get it right away. And by respecting their license requirements and having a relationship with them, they continue to let us have access to their very latest imagery. And we work hard to maintain that relationship. So let's see. Yeah, Russ says diagonal lines are where you haven't downloaded OSM data. That's true. Blake says the video, or Russ says the video is rather glitchy and that I should slow down my on-screen motion a lot. So Courtney, there is multiple people are flying drones in the area now. There is an umbrella organization that is coordinating drone flights in Nepal that's called U-Aviators. And they're the overall umbrella organization that's responsible for drone flight coordination in Nepal. And the United Nations, UN OCHA, basically for all the humanitarian organizations that are responding to this event, they're kind of divided up into what they call clusters, and each cluster is responsible for a different aspect of disaster relief. So there'll be one cluster that's worried about like shelters, and there'll be one cluster that's worried about providing water and facilities for washing and using the bathroom, and there'll be another cluster that's responsible for a different aspect of it. And UN OCHA dictates who is going to manage that cluster, because you might have 10 agencies that are responding with tents, but UN OCHA will say, okay, Shelter Box is a humanitarian organization. UN OCHA might say, okay, Shelter Box, you're going to be responsible for coordinating all of the shelter cluster related activity. So the 10 organizations that are providing tents will have to work through Shelter Box. Shelter Box will tell them where to go, what we need, that kind of thing. So recently with UAVs, UN OCHA has started picking a coordinating organization for that as well. So in this particular disaster, UN OCHA has designated this organization called U-Aviators, and U-Aviators is coordinating all of the people who are showing up there and flying drones to make sure that they're, you know, being used efficiently. They're not all flying over the same spot. They're all getting proper clearances from the Nepali government. Air traffic in Nepal right now is pretty chaotic, and to have uncoordinated drone flights going on would just make things worse. And so there is drone imagery. I don't know. I don't think we've gotten any drone imagery. We got drone imagery after the Vanuatu disaster pretty quickly. And again, it was U-Aviators that was, I don't think they were coordinating in Vanuatu, but they were there flying drones. So I don't think we've gotten any drone imagery yet. I haven't seen anybody talk about it, but I know there's people on the way. Great. Glad I could answer that question. Please keep asking them. Unfortunately, I don't see the text messages until I have to catch up here. Russ says filling in those tags like horse allowed and stuff like that could be from the ID editor, making it look like you should fill those things in. Yeah, that's true. ID shows kind of a dialogue that would encourage you to fill stuff in. So, I'm out of stuff. Totally out of stuff.
Hey, Blake, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Russ.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It was giving me some feedback that my microphone wasn't working. I had to go find one because I'm on my desktop, so headphones it is.
Okay. Sound good, man.
Hey, yeah, thanks for doing this. This is pretty good. Yeah, the video thing is a little wacky. Like when you were trying to show the drop-down windows, like I'd see it for just a second and then it would go blank. And it seems like whenever you try to drag the screen, it also clips it out.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's partly because the Google Hangouts client is Java-based and JASM is Java-based, and it seems like whatever the screen controlling scheme is, whether they both share OpenGL or whatever it is, it gets a little glitchy. It's actually much better if I'm not using JASM and I'm demonstrating with ID.
Okay.
So, but I like JASM much better. So, but I'm running out of stuff. I really appreciate everybody's patience. This is really the first time I've done this, and so we're trying to figure it out. It's interesting. Somebody did a bridge. As far as bridges go, if you're ever mapping bridges, this one looks like it's done basically okay. This is the important layer equals 1 is the important thing for bridges. That's because, see, this bridge goes above the road. Layer 0 is the default layer. So if you have a bridge that goes above the ground, then that's typically layer 1. Sometimes you'll have like a bridge that stays at layer 0 and the road goes down underneath it, and then the road that goes down underneath it you would probably make like layer -1. But anytime you're dealing with a bridge, you want to check and make sure that you have the layers correct. And this one looks done right, so there's no shared node. This is a road that goes under it, and there's no layer tag on this road, which means it's layer 0. And since the bridge is layer 1, OpenStreetMap knows the bridge is above this road, and they don't share a node because they're not really connected. But they share a node on the ends where they actually connect to the road. And it doesn't share a road with this river either. And the river has no layer, so that means the river is at layer 0. And again, the bridge is at layer 1, so the bridge is above the river, and they don't share a node. Now here, these two do share a node. That's a little bit weird. I don't know. I can't.
It looks like Phil actually just left too, so it's just Benoit, me, you, and Courtney now. So maybe. Oh, actually, Phil just came back. I was going to suggest if Courtney had other research kind of things she wanted to chat with us about, we could spend a little time.
I do. Ask away, Courtney, please. You're not interrupting at all. So one thing, while you're typing that out, I'll just finish up with Phil. Did you get my layer 1 lecture about the bridge?
Yes, I did.
And
Makes
so
sense.
here you see this road shares a node. So no sharing a node here because it goes above. But here the road shares a node with the river. And that's probably because at a different time of the season, you can just drive right across there.
Hey,
And
Blake,
so
is that actually marked as a ford?
it is marked as a ford.
Okay, yeah, that's maybe a good thing to point out, is that's the correct way to do that when you have a road in a riverbed intersect where, we don't want to, or we definitely want to show that the road continues on to the other side. So yeah, you can either do it as a node like that, or kind of like the bridge, you can actually tag a section of the road as a ford.
Yeah, but here they tag this node as a ford. And ford means, river and road intersect. So this is probably mapped correctly. We'll trust that whomever mapped it. This got mapped 2 years ago by Geofreund and this person. Interesting.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that in the Ebola mapping. A lot of the what we would consider the primary road from one village to another actually crosses a river, and that's actually the correct path. And a lot of people, I think, are a little reluctant to show a road that goes directly into a river, but yet that is correct.
Yeah, it happens pretty often. So Courtney, this question sounds familiar. I think it talked about this a little bit already in IRC, but all of our mapping work is always building out on previous mapping work. So KLL has, because they've been working on OpenStreetMap mapping for a couple of years now, it's just been a phenomenal benefit because they had so much of the Kathmandu Valley already mapped in detail from local people with local knowledge. So when this happened, we basically skipped the 2.5 million people that live in Kathmandu Valley because it had already been mapped so well. And we immediately started mapping in a donut around the Kathmandu Valley because that's the part that Kathmandu Living Labs hadn't gotten to yet. And that's the part where us bringing a great number of people from our crowdsourcing efforts could really help fill in what's obvious for us to map from this aerial imagery, our pre-event aerial imagery. So, we eventually went back and started reviewing the stuff that was in Kathmandu Valley at their request, but primarily because they had already mapped that so well, it let us focus on these outlying areas, and we could go right to work on the outlying areas. Otherwise, if they hadn't already been doing this for years, we'd still be trying to map Kathmandu, the Kathmandu Valley itself. So it absolutely let us start working in places where we would not have started working yet if they had not already done all of that work. Not to mention, because we work with KLL, they have people who can speak the local language, talk to local authorities, talk to the Army, talk to, the aid organizations on the ground, get feedback from them, and then they can come back, and in one of our coordination rooms, they're sharing with us the information about places where we need more mapping, places where we need to start paying attention to the internally displaced persons camp. So now, because they're there, they're guiding a lot of the work that we do. Every morning we sort of have a little chit-chat with them, and they tell us, this is what we'd like you guys to work on, and then that's what we focus on, and then we help share with them, this is new imagery we've gotten since yesterday, and help coordinate with them some of the resources that we've come across that they haven't heard of, back and forth. And so, yeah, I mean, not to mention, in just looking at some of this mapping that we're looking at, I don't know about this river, this will be a terrible example, but this river was, mapped by Geofreund 2 years ago. And I don't know, Geofreund I do not think is part of KLL, but people who have been doing like river, waterway imports and just mapping wherever they were interested in because they vacationed there or for whatever reason, all that was immediately useful to us, and we just extended what they already had. In addition, we could look at what they had already mapped, and it could help educate us about what sorts of things were in there so that when we started doing mapping with new mappers, we could do our very best, which always has room for improvement, but we could do our very best to help guide that mapping. So I can go back and I can look. Yeah, Geofreund was just adding highways 2 years ago on his own, not through HOT at all, and then was extending them. So he was doing highways. Looks like he also did a waterway at the same time. So yeah, we absolutely. I mean, that's just it. Everybody's doing their little bit of a part, and additively, it improves as we go along. It's such a bummer that it's an instance like this that brings 2,000 people to get a country like Nepal mapped, but that's just the reality of the situation. So I would say that material assistance being sped up, enabled, and empowered by earlier work. Our main function is to provide what we call a base map, and that's roads and places, waterways, and residential areas. So we are typically, the feedback that we get is that we are typically, because we encourage locals to do it, because we encourage people who have been on vacation there, because we look for data sources that we can import into it, the feedback that we typically get is that for any average crisis, OpenStreetMap is the very best base map to start with. And then you combine that with the fact that we can get a couple thousand people to fill out what hasn't already been filled out, and it goes into the OpenStreetMap database, so now people can get out different stuff. We generally get feedback that we're the best base map, and that's the way that we empower and speed stuff up, is by trying to be the very best base map that we can be. We also are usually the best source of things like where are all the places of worship, where are all the schools, where are all the hospitals, where are all the clinics. So that's more base map information that we have, and we're usually, again, the best source of that because, local people have done it, or people who have been on vacation there, or we've talked to the government people and they've let us use their existing list to import it into OpenStreetMap. Because once it's an OpenStreetMap, it's not just a map, it's data. So other organizations actually pull out the data. They'll ask us, this happened in Vanuatu. We need a list of all the places of worship. So we could go into OpenStreetMap and we had like 40 places of worship mapped. That just didn't exist anywhere else. So I could get out what we call geolocated data, which showed latitude and longitude of at least 40 places of worship in Vanuatu. And I have no idea what they wanted it for. I don't know what they did with it. But they came into our coordination room and said, hey, can anybody help me find where they asked for churches. OpenStreetMap refers to them as places of worship, but they came in and said, where can somebody help me find a data source for churches? And, it was literally 5 minutes later, and I could hand her a list of 40 places of worship with their latitude and longitude, and if she wanted to see them all on a map, I could send her to Overpass Turbo, and she could see them all plotted on a map as well. So that's mainly how we try and speed up and help the response, is by being the very best base map that we can and having the very best database of, we tend to call them amenities, but having the very best database of amenities, which is really just locations and names of buildings. Now in this instance, we're also mapping things like, landslides, so that now agencies will start to know these roads are no longer passable. This bridge is now damaged and can't be traveled on. there was a dam located right next to this epicenter, so now maybe you need to start thinking about what's going on downstream of this dam, and do you need to evacuate people even if their buildings are still intact. So by using all this data that we've had, we're just trying to make it possible for the relief agencies to do whatever they need to do as efficiently as possible, at least as far as the GIS data goes. So that's really how we try and speed up those types of responses. And we get good feedback on it. I mean, Russ and I just spent 3 days with some of the major aid organizations in the world, and they all shared places that we could improve, and things that we could improve, and processes that we could improve. But they all started and ended with OpenStreetMap is our go-to resource for basemap, and OpenStreetMap is our go-to resource for getting basemap fixed when there is no basemap, which makes us feel good. And the more feedback we get from them on the places that we can improve, the better the process is going to be as we go forward. Truth be told, we're approaching damage assessments slowly because it's difficult to do just from aerial imagery. Aerial imagery, there's multiple types of aerial imagery. But one way to divide aerial imagery up is between direct overhead imagery, that's called nadir imagery, and imagery that's taken at an angle so that you can see the sides of the buildings, and that we generally refer to as oblique imagery. Nadir imagery, the direct overhead stuff, again, it also depends on the damage. We experimented with damage assessments in Vanuatu, which was a hurricane, which produces a different kind of damage pattern than an earthquake does. So Vanuatu, where it's high winds ripping off a roof, 3 days later, somebody's picked up all the pieces and set them back on top of their roof, or they put a tarp over their roof. Now it's extremely difficult to do any damage assessments. Earthquake damage, again, it's a little bit different. The roofs might be intact, but if you could see the walls would all be cracked. So it's really hard to do damage assessments from aerial imagery. Damage assessments will always best be done from on the ground for building by building damage assessments. We can do, a little bit less fine damage assessments, a little bit coarser grade, where I can look at a block or a neighborhood or a village, and I can, get an assessment depending on how much debris I see on the ground, or if I see houses that are just in rubble, I can start to say, okay, well, this neighborhood looks about 75% destroyed. So, it also depends on the grade of damage that we're trying to assess. Total destruction, not total destruction. That's a little bit easier. It also helps if we have before and after imagery so that I can see what it looked like before the event and after the event, and a little slider that lets me either go back and forth between them or fade in and out between them. That improves our accuracy. But damage assessments from aerial imagery are difficult, and Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team is taking it slow because our first priority is data quality, not quantity. So that's why landslides, this time around, landslides are a lot easier for us to identify, and that affects, the logistics network, like the roads and stuff like that. So this time around, we were spending more time on landslides because that's a little bit easier. One, we have before imagery. Two, we have after imagery. That's a little bit easier for us to start to determine. But from the aerial imagery we have, it's super tough to do damage assessments, and we're well aware of the fact that our damage assessments are not going to be anywhere near as good as they are compared to somebody on the ground who can walk all the way around the building and see exactly what's up. And any damage assessments we do, which as far as I know, we haven't really done very many except for kind of a course level where we're like, there's destruction here and landslides. Any of the damage assessments we do come with, a big disclaimer that this is done from aerial imagery, and so you're going to have a big amount of variability in exactly how accurate it is. This primarily for we experimented with damage assessments in Vanuatu. That's where we started kind of piloting that originally. And we had nadir imagery and we had oblique imagery. And truth be told, the oblique imagery was only a tiny bit more useful because you still only see in one side of the building, and depending on how close to the building it is or how far away from the building it is, you could only see a certain amount. So when we were experimenting with damage assessment in Vanuatu, we had nadir imagery and we had oblique imagery, and I found them both equally challenging to do damage assessments from. It was not like, oh my goodness, now we have this oblique imagery, it's super easy to do and our accuracy is going to go way up. It was a little bit better than the nadir imagery, but just by nature of what had been supplied, it was not dramatically different. It didn't make a dramatic difference. I found them almost the same. Because some of these places too, like Vanuatu, unless you have some concept of what goes on the ground, it can be super hard to tell if what you're looking at with a wall missing is from a disaster event or you're just looking at, slum housing. You know what I mean? It can be really tough to tell if some place has been hit by a typhoon or if this was just a slum to start with and it was made ad hoc with found materials. And that's just that. You know what I mean? There's plenty of places where there's half walls and big holes in the wall and nothing happened. So, that makes damage assessment from aerial or oblique imagery equally difficult, is that it can be very difficult to tell what these places looked like before the event for me to make a decision about if the event had an impact on it or not. So the answer to the question is we've used both. I don't know what damage assessments we're doing right now. I don't know if we're doing any damage assessments right now. I don't know who's doing damage assessments. I know we were trying to identify landslides, and we were concentrating on the changing sizes of the internally displaced persons camps. I haven't seen a lot. I've seen damage assessment talk, but I don't know what our role in it is at the moment. Did I run you out of questions, or do you have any more? How about you, Phil? Did you think of any questions while I was answering Courtney's questions?
No, not really. I just know there was some land areas that are marking brownfield where they were seeing some damage that was visible.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, report severely damaged housing areas by land use equals brownfield. Right, okay. So that's more like what I was talking about, that we are much better off at like spotting large areas of damage, like at the residential area level, not at the individual building level. Yeah, housing areas. Yeah, that we cannot do too bad at. That's a lot more straightforward than building by building. Building by building is really difficult. From aerial imagery. Yeah, that's a good point, Phil. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Blake. This has been very informative for me, and I'm going to head out of here and get back to work on it.
All right, man. I appreciate all your time, man. And, anytime you can email me. You have my email address and stuff like that. So glad to jump on, show you anything, whatever else like that works with. Whatever works for you, I mean to say.
Yeah, I got to learn Google Hangouts today. Thank you.
And Google Hangouts too, right? That's great. I'm glad. Courtney, my understanding is that's true, that the link that got provided turns into a place that you can find the archive of this. It's just on YouTube, automatically goes to YouTube. That's my pleasure, Courtney, anytime. You also have my email address, I think. And, IRC works too. I just didn't have a chance to do IRC today. And I see somebody else joined, Val. Val, can you see the text chat over here on the left-hand side?
I think that depends on client too. It's right-hand side for me. But Val, it looks like you are able to speak as well.
Yeah, truth be told, it's the right-hand side for me too. I just get my left and right mixed up.
I think you also have to open it. But yeah, Val just said hi there, so we have contact.
That's great. Val, did you have any specific questions or anything you were interested in specifically? We were just doing, you just missed 2 hours of me sliding through my JASM client, racking my brain to think of tips and tricks for a new mapper, and kind of showing how I review existing mapping. Like, have you used JASM before, Val? Oh, I see. Very nice. So you have used JASM before. So if you were interested in anything, it would be advanced JASM. Are you an advanced JASM user? Okay. This all looks pretty well mapped so far. It's not too bad.
Hey, Blake, do you know, is there like a limit to how long you can do a hangout?
I think it's 8 hours.
Wow, that's pretty good though. I thought maybe they'd cut you off at like an hour or something, but it might be good to kind of make this a regular thing and just hang out together for 8 hours.
I don't know. I think my limit is less than 8 hours. I think I cut me off at less than 8 hours.
Well, yeah, I wonder if there's a way where we could like switch back and forth so that you could leave and somebody else could take over.
There probably is. I could probably make you a presenter or something. Let's see here, Russell. I can certainly say that you present to everyone, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, like I said, if you tweet this, I'm sure it gets more popular. The hot email list is less spectacular than if it got tweeted. I'm sure we'd have a lot more people if it got tweeted.
Right, and just giving a half day's notice or a day's notice would probably also bring a lot more people.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting how you can see how all through this river valley here, this is all farmland. all along the river on each side. Russ, did you see that JGC gave us 30-meter elevation?
Oh, I did see something about that.
Yes, my. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely useful.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you saw the open cycle map trick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Val, I think it says you are muted,
Don't look at me.
but it may. So if you can't find the little mute button on the client, then don't worry about it. You can also just type in questions and we'll get to them.
Yeah, it definitely says muted. Too bad Phil left. He messed with this too. There's a gear icon up there at the top of the screen for settings, and it gave me a pop down for which mic to use and which speakers to use. Phil
Yeah,
had to straighten
when I
this out.
first plugged in my headset, it got all wacky and said that my mic wasn't acceptable or something. But yeah, I like this. The settings it gives you are basically just it gave me two choices for types of mics. Oh, hey, there's Sev.
Hey, look, the GeoChat plugin. Sev. Hey, Sev. But the chat part of GeoChat is terrible. If you're on a data layer. If you're not on a data layer, it's better. If it does that. Yeah, the GeoChat plugin is great because it lets you see where other people are on the map. This is the best feature, man. So this is Severin, one of our hot OSM members. Boy, look at that. That's a lot of mapping in there. Holy Pete.
So Val, we do encourage notes. I assume you're talking about the actual notes feature built into OpenStreetMap. It's it's just not. It doesn't seem to be as quick to get stuff done. Of course, adding notes for like business names and that kind of stuff is great, especially for people that don't want to get into actually editing themselves. But it's a process. So that somebody's got to add the note, and then somebody's got to take the time to find that note, and then deal with it. But I do every time I introduce OpenStreetMap to new folks. I do mention the note feature and encourage its use. There's like Foursquare and Craigslist and probably some other sites have already built in notes capability right from their website. So, like in the States, if you use Craigslist to make a purchase or to set up a meeting to make an exchange, it'll show you on the map where that exchange is, and sometimes people add notes, if the data was incorrect or if the map was incorrect for that location. But it doesn't really, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's the greatest way to communicate between public and mappers.
I disagree. I'm all over it. I just sent my how to do notes to contribute to crisis mapping link. Because people aren't going to learn or make an account or anything else, but if they have local knowledge where they can look at the map and they can spot on the building or whatever that they know what it is, do it. By all means, we need that info. And I edit with notes on all the time. And if somebody's dropped a note that I can do something about, like put that data in OpenStreetMap, I do it. It only takes 2 seconds. If I can't, if they don't put their email address and I can't figure out what they're talking about, it doesn't go in, but I try. This is interesting. I wonder if that's really a hospital. Sure looks like one, eh?
Is that a helipad right in the middle there?
I mean, there's a big H. I don't know if that stands for hospital or helipad. Why did I get no data? Oh, because I had my data later turned off. Yeah, somebody has it set as a helipad.
Yeah, maybe a little big, but. So yeah, I mean that's great. I actually haven't looked at that, Blake. So I'll have to take a look at your link there. But maybe yeah, like a specific task to go through and look at notes would make it a little bit better in my mind, I guess. I guess my main point is it's just not a lot of people do what you do, so a lot of the notes kind of go left unattended.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look. See, this is interesting. Yeah. See all these spontaneous camps. This is a spontaneous IDP campsite. It's really rough to look at with the previous. Yeah, these are all IDP campsites. It's really misleading with the old imagery, pre-event imagery. Yeah, Phil, man. See Phil catching me deleting shit? Excuse my language. Did you see Phil catching
We'll
me
need to
deleting
edit that
stuff?
out of there. No, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, of course, I've been kind of sidetracked with.
I was looking at this little, so there was a little, I still don't think it's right, but there was a little tiny square that was marked IDP camp in the middle of nowhere, and I'm just like, what is this? This isn't right. I'm getting rid of this. And Phil's like, could it just be that they used the new updated imagery? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, good point. Okay, I guess I'll leave that alone.
Yeah, always, especially yeah, when we have these activations, it's always best to be overly cautious with what you delete.
Yeah, it sure didn't. I mean, I still don't think it was right because it was the size of a garage. I don't know how big of a. How about this one here where it says area equals yes on top of a thing that says building?
Yeah, I would definitely delete the area there.
Let's see. Let's see. Keep that one. I wish I knew how to merge those. Is there a merge those? Replace geometry? Yeah, no.
You could just add the tags from one to the other.
That's the history I want. I guess I'm just going to have to delete that area equals y. Okay. Area equals yes. Okay. So let's see here. I don't know, Val. It's hard to say. I mean, I understand notes for people who are not OSM contributors. And I mean, we definitely need to improve the comments on the individual tasks too. They get lost. Nobody ever sees them. I want to make an RSS feed of all the comments in a project. But I mean, if you had something you were trying to communicate, yeah. And I mean, I don't know. You have to have a plugin here. I have to have a plugin to get notes, and then I have to say download notes. So there's no notes for this one. But most people, I think, are never going to see a note. I don't know how it shows up in ID, but you have to consciously be mapping with notes on, with the plugin installed, with notes on, and make sure you're downloading the notes. But I think they're great for communicating for people who just have 1 or 2 bits of information to share. They can't share it in the tasking manager. Land use equals brownfield. Okay. Not too sure about that either. Not going to complain.
Well, that actually may be off the new imagery. That the situation we were talking about, if that's now an obvious big pile of rubble, um, that is the proper tag, I believe.
Well, that's what they say to use. I don't know if I could consider that the proper tag.
The current proper tag.
Yeah. I don't know. Can ID see notes while you're editing? Do you see notes in ID while you're editing?
There may be a way. I don't know off the top of my head. Like I was telling people on IRC, I actually still use Potlatch 2 just because I got so used to it that it's much easier for me.
Interesting. You don't use JASM?
I do when I need the power of JASM, but typically when I'm just doing kind of quick stuff, I just turn to Potlatch.
Interesting. I never just do quick stuff. Okay, I would fix this. Yeah, this is not good. I'm going to trust they mapped that part right. I don't want to look at notes anymore. Yeesh. Hard to say. Guess. Yeah, so if there's short ways like that, this was not connected to anything, and it needs to be connected on both ends, otherwise it doesn't help us very much to understand what's going on in the road network.
Yeah, I do not see an obvious way to show notes on ID.
Sav, buddy, move around.
He's probably just logged in and not actually around.
That's my guess. That's my guess. Hope I don't cause more conflict. Yeesh, I wonder how that got mapped. I mean, I haven't looked at a ton of mapping, but, truth be told, it hasn't been that bad at all. I've seen a lot worse mapping in the past. This is interesting. I don't know about this. Doesn't really look like a building to me.
All right, I have to follow up with this Mongolia thing too, so I'm gonna mute myself. I might still, I'll hang out, but not sure I'll be back anytime shortly.
Okay, yeah, I'm probably going to wrap it up pretty soon here too, Russ. I got some stuff to take care of.
All right, well, yeah, thanks, Blake, and of course, here I'll put my email in the chat real quick just in case anybody wants to follow up with me.
Well, it's very nice to meet you, Pa Lolo. I'm sure I didn't pronounce your name correctly. Yeah. Okay, I just got booted.
Yeah, but it actually didn't end the call, so apparently there must be a way that we can just keep on going.
Yeah, it's a bummer though. It's been pretty solid until now. So yeah, I'm sorry you joined late too, Palolo. Hopefully next time. We'll do it again next time, and it'll be great. Did you have any other questions about anything before I wrap it up? Why does the screen keep blinking? That's the question I have. Okay, well, I'll schedule another one of these, and maybe you want to join then. And did you leave? You left. Okay, it's just me, you, and Altheo. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to wrap this one up. I'm going to call this one good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.
Yep, take care.